March 1896. A European army marches into Africa expecting an easy victory. They believe Africans cannot defeat modern European forces, but waiting for them is an African king who studied their tactics, built a massive army, and is about to shatter every colonial myth. This is the story of how one man changed history. Before we dive into this incredible true story, if you love learning about the hidden heroes of history that schools never taught you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's go back to 1896. The year is 1896. Almost the entire African continent has fallen under European control. The Berlin Conference of 1884 allowed European powers to divide Africa among themselves without consulting a single African leader. Britain controls vast territories. France has claimed massive regions. Germany, Belgium, and Portugal have all carved out their pieces. By 1896, only two African nations remain truly independent: Liberia, founded by freed American slaves, and Ethiopia, an ancient Christian kingdom in the Horn of Africa, with over 2,000 years of recorded history. Italy desperately wants Ethiopia. They have already colonized Eritrea along the Red Sea coast. They want more territory to compete with other European powers. The Italian government believes conquering Ethiopia will be straightforward. European armies have been defeating African forces across the continent. They see no reason why Ethiopia should be different. What they do not know is that Ethiopia has a leader who will rewrite history. His name is Menelik II, and he is about to deliver the most crushing defeat any European colonial power has ever experienced in Africa. Menelik was born on August 17, 1844, in Angolala, in the Shewa region of central Ethiopia. His birth name was Saleh Mariam. His father, Haile Melekot, ruled Shewa as a regional king under the Ethiopian Empire. But Menelik's early life was marked by conflict and captivity. In 1855, when Menelik was just 11 years old, Emperor Tewodros II conquered Shewa. The emperor took young Menelik as a hostage to ensure the region's loyalty. This captivity lasted 10 years, but instead of breaking him, it educated him. Menelik received training in military strategy, politics, and statecraft. He learned how power worked in Ethiopia and beyond. In 1865, at age 21, Menelik escaped and returned to Shewa. His father had died, and Menelik claimed his rightful position as king of Shewa. He immediately began consolidating power and expanding his territory. Over the next 24 years, he transformed Shewa into the most powerful kingdom in Ethiopia. Menelik understood something crucial. The world was changing rapidly. European powers were using modern weapons and technology to colonize Africa. Traditional warfare would not be enough to resist them. He needed to modernize Ethiopia while maintaining its independence and culture. Starting in the 1870s, Menelik began purchasing modern weapons from European arms dealers. He bought rifles from France, Italy, Britain, and Russia. He played these powers against each other, using competition to his advantage. By the 1890s, Ethiopia possessed one of the largest stockpiles of modern firearms in Africa. But weapons alone were not enough. Menelik also modernized his administration. He introduced a telegraph system connecting major cities across his kingdom. He built roads to move troops and supplies quickly. He established a more organized tax system to fund his military. He brought in foreign advisors and technical experts while keeping Ethiopians in control of decision-making. In March 1889, Emperor Johannes IV died in battle against Sudanese forces. Menelik, as the most powerful regional king, claimed the imperial throne. He was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia on November 3, 1889. He now ruled the entire country, and he would need every bit of his political skill for what came next. Italy had been expanding from its colony in Eritrea. On May 2, 1889, Italy and Ethiopia signed the Treaty of Wuchale. This treaty was supposed to establish peace and friendship between the two nations. But there was a major problem. The treaty existed in two versions, one written in Italian, one written in Amharic, the official language of Ethiopia. Article 17 was the critical clause. In the Amharic version, it stated that the Emperor of Ethiopia could use Italian diplomatic services if he chose to. In the Italian version, it stated that the Emperor must conduct all foreign affairs through Italy. The difference was enormous. The Italian version effectively made Ethiopia an Italian protectorate. The Amharic version simply offered Italy as one diplomatic option among many. When Menelik discovered this discrepancy in 1890, he was outraged. Italy had attempted to trick Ethiopia into surrendering its sovereignty. Menelik immediately sent letters to European leaders, stating clearly that Ethiopia was fully independent. In February 1893, he formally renounced the Treaty of Wuchale. Italy refused to accept this. Italian officials believed an African leader had no right to challenge a European power. Tensions escalated. In December 1894, an uprising occurred in northern Ethiopia against Italian influence. Italy used this as an excuse to advance further into Ethiopian territory. By early 1895, Italian forces were moving inland from Eritrea, occupying Ethiopian towns and establishing military positions. In January 1895, Italian troops defeated Ethiopian forces at the Battle of Coatit. In July 1895, they won again at the Battle of Senafe. These victories made the Italians overconfident. General Oreste Baratieri, the Italian commander in East Africa, sent optimistic reports to Rome. Italian newspapers declared that victory was certain, but Menelik was preparing something unprecedented in African history. On September 17, 1895, Emperor Menelik II issued a proclamation to all Ethiopians. He called for total mobilization. He used the telegraph system to spread the message across the empire. He appealed to Ethiopian nationalism, religious duty, and love of independence. The response was overwhelming. From every region, people answered the call. Farmers left their fields. Nobles brought their private armies. Regional kings marched with their troops. Women prepared supplies and provisions. Some women even joined combat units. The Empress, Taitu Betul, personally commanded her own battalion of soldiers and played a crucial role in military planning. By January 1896, Menelik had assembled an army of approximately 100,000 soldiers. Some historical sources estimate the force at 120,000 or even higher. This was the largest African army mobilized in modern history. They were armed with approximately 100,000 rifles of various modern types, plus traditional weapons and artillery pieces. The Ethiopian army included soldiers from all ethnic groups within the empire. Amhara, Oromo, Tigrayan, and many others fought side by side. Menelik had achieved something remarkable. He had united Ethiopia's diverse population under a single cause, defending their homeland from foreign invasion. In February 1896, this massive army marched north toward the Italian positions. They brought their own food supplies. They maintained discipline and organization. They were ready for war. General Baratieri found himself in a difficult situation. His forces numbered approximately 17,000 men, including about 11,000 Italian soldiers and 6,000 Eritrean askaris, local troops recruited by Italy. He was outnumbered roughly 6-1. His supply lines were stretched thin. Some of his Eritrean troops were deserting. The Italian government pressured Baratieri to achieve victory quickly. On February 28, 1896, against his better judgment, Baratieri decided to attack the Ethiopian positions near the town of Adwa. The Italian plan was to advance at night and attack at dawn. But things went wrong immediately. The maps the Italians used were inaccurate, the terrain was unfamiliar and difficult. The three Italian brigades became separated in the darkness. When dawn broke on March 1, 1896, the Battle of Adwa began. The Italian forces found themselves scattered across the battlefield in isolated groups. The Ethiopians were ready and waiting. Ethiopian forces attacked from multiple directions. They used the mountainous terrain to their advantage. They surrounded isolated Italian units. They coordinated their movements effectively. The battle raged throughout the morning and into the afternoon. The Italian brigades fought bravely, but were overwhelmed by superior numbers and coordination. The Dabormida Brigade was completely destroyed. The Albertoni Brigade was overrun. The Elena Brigade was forced to retreat under heavy fire. Italian soldiers later described the battle as chaos and carnage. By late afternoon, the Italian army was in full retreat. But escape was difficult. Ethiopian forces pursued them. Many Italian soldiers were killed during the retreat. Others were captured. The defeat was total and catastrophic. The casualty numbers tell the story. Italy lost approximately 7,000 soldiers killed in action. Another 1,500 were wounded. 3,000 were taken prisoner, including General Albertoni. Italian sources confirm these figures. It was the worst defeat a European colonial power had ever suffered in Africa. Ethiopian casualties were also significant. Approximately 7,000 Ethiopian soldiers were killed, with another 10,000 wounded. But Ethiopia had won a decisive victory. The Italian invasion had been completely defeated. News of the disaster reached Italy on March 2, 1896. The Italian public was shocked. How could a modern European army be destroyed by an African force? The government of Prime Minister Francesco Crispi fell within days. Riots broke out in Italian cities. The entire nation was in crisis. In Africa and among colonized peoples worldwide, the reaction was completely different. Ethiopia had proven that European colonial powers could be defeated. African leadership, organization, and courage could triumph over supposedly superior European forces. The myth of European invincibility was shattered. Menelik could have pursued the retreating Italians back to Eritrea. He could have tried to capture Italy's colonial possessions, but he made a strategic decision. He had achieved his primary objective. Ethiopian independence was secure. Further warfare would only cost more lives. On October 26, 1896, Italy and Ethiopia signed the Treaty of Addis Ababa. Italy formally recognized the absolute independence of Ethiopia. They agreed to pay 3 million lire in reparations. They withdrew all claims to Ethiopian territory. The Treaty of Wuchale was completely annulled. Ethiopia had won both militarily and diplomatically. The victory at Adwa had immediate and long-term consequences. Ethiopia remained independent for the next 40 years, while the rest of Africa lived under colonial rule. When Italy tried to invade again in 1935 under Benito Mussolini, they remembered the humiliation of Adwa. Even though Italy eventually occupied Ethiopia from 1936 to 1941 using modern weapons including poison gas, they could never erase the memory of their first defeat. Menelik continued ruling Ethiopia until his health declined. He modernized the country further. He established schools, including the first modern schools in Addis Ababa. He built a railway from the coast to the capital. He created a modern postal system. He brought in electricity and telephone lines. He expanded trade with foreign nations while maintaining Ethiopian sovereignty. He also worked to end slavery within Ethiopia, though this was a gradual process due to the institution's deep roots in Ethiopian society. He balanced modernization with respect for Ethiopian traditions and Orthodox Christianity. When Menelik died on December 12, 1913, he left behind an independent nation and a legacy that inspired millions. The Battle of Adwa became a symbol for anti-colonial resistance worldwide. African Americans, Caribbean peoples, and independence movements across Africa drew inspiration from Ethiopia's victory. Leaders like Marcus Garvey promoted Ethiopia as proof of African capability and greatness. Rastafarian religion, founded in Jamaica in the 1930s, looked to Ethiopia as a spiritual homeland. Pan-African movements held up Adwa as evidence that colonialism could be defeated. When African nations began winning independence in the 1950s and 1960s, many of their leaders cited Adwa as inspiration. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, and others acknowledged that Menelik had proven African nations could stand equal to any power on earth. Today, March 1st is celebrated in Ethiopia as Victory of Adwa Day, a national holiday commemorating the battle. The victory represents more than just military success. It represents dignity, sovereignty, and the refusal to accept subjugation. The Battle of Adwa stands as one of the most significant events in African history. It demonstrated that European colonialism was not inevitable. It proved that with proper leadership, preparation, unity, and determination, African nations could defeat European powers in conventional warfare. Menelik II achieved what seemed impossible. He studied his enemies, learned their methods, acquired their weapons, and beat them at their own game. He united a diverse nation under a common cause. He planned strategically and executed brilliantly. He defended not just territory, but the very idea that Africans had the right to govern themselves. In our modern world, the story of Adwa reminds us that powerful forces can be challenged and defeated. That unity and preparation can overcome seemingly impossible odds. That leaders who genuinely serve their people can achieve extraordinary things. And that history is made by those who refuse to accept that might makes right. The legacy of King Menelik II and the Ethiopian victory at Adwa continues to inspire people around the world who fight for justice, independence, and dignity. It remains proof that courage, intelligence, and unity can triumph over aggression and arrogance. So there you have it. The incredible true story of how King Menelik II and the Ethiopian people defeated European colonialism when almost everyone believed it couldn't be done. If this story inspired you, smash that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. There are so many untold stories of African brilliance and resistance throughout history, and I'm committed to bringing them to you. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another one.